A global threat assessment report says there was a significant increase in cases involving child sexual abuse materials since 2019. To talk about what Filipinos can do to protect children, we have Shailey Hingorani of We Protect Global Alliance joining us now from London. Shailey, great to have you with us. Why has there been an increase in cases involving child sexual abuse materials from 4 years ago?
Thanks very much for having me. You're absolutely right in pointing out that the global scale of the threat of child sexual abuse and exploitation is growing exponentially. In 2022, the US-based National Center for Missing and Exploited Children analyzed just over 32 million reports of child sexual abuse material, and these were received from across the globe. Now, this represents an 87% increase on the number processed in 2019.
Mm-hmm. Well,
in the global threat assessment, we argue that these two trends are being fueled. This overall trend is being fueled by two trends. First is the trend related to the intensification or worsening of known forms of abuse. For example, we noticed that financial sexual extortion and coercion has seen a 7,200% increase in reports, leading to the FBI issuing a public advisory on the explosion of such schemes.
yeah. So, Shailey,
Analysis of gaming data is showing that children have been locked into high-risk grooming situations in as little as 19 seconds with an average speed of 45 minutes. Very quickly, let me also tell you the second reason for the increase in these reports, and these have to do with new forms of abuse which are linked to emerging technologies. For example, we're seeing AI tools being used to generate child sexual abuse, this has steadily been increasing since August 2022.
Shailey, I'd like to jump in because you mentioned so many numbers, and indeed, this is very, very concerning. Especially many kids right now have their own digital lives without help from parents or guardians. Let me ask you about the Philippines. What is the current state of child sexual abuses cases online here?
Right. So the Department of Justice's Office of Cybercrime, for instance, in 2018 saw over 5,500 cases, right, of online sharing, resharing, and selling of child sexual abuse images and videos. In 2019, there was a slight dip. But in 2022, we saw that there was a huge increase, right? And a lot of the increase is because of the pandemic, like you said at the start of this interview.
And are you working closely with Philippine law enforcement agencies to stop the perpetrators of these criminal acts?
We Protect Global Alliance is a global coalition of multi-stakeholders, right? And we work with a number of members based in the Philippines, and our members work quite closely with the law enforcement agencies based there. We do work with the law enforcement agencies from the Philippines in the Virtual Global Task Force, which is an international coordinated effort of 15 different law enforcement agencies to work together to respond to the threat of child sexual abuse and exploitation online.
And are users, parents, caregivers, guardians reporting cases of this online sexual abuse?
So it's a whole host of different stakeholders. We find that sometimes children are reporting abuse by themselves online. So they may be using the report function on social media platforms. Parents and other responsible adults in the lives of children may also be filing these reports. And that's exactly how we want the reporting to continue, right? It shouldn't just be the responsibility of children to report abuse when they experience it. It should be a collective responsibility. But at the same time, I also want to say that our focus moving forward should be on prevention, so that we're not just intervening after the abuse has taken place, but we're really thinking of how to prevent abuse from taking place in the first place.
It's a very important point that you raised there, which is prevention. Our technology companies, which are the conduits for this child sexual abuse online, proactive and installing safety measures that will ensure user safety from the outset and not just an afterthought.
Yeah, that's such an important point. I think the tech sector definitely has a very important role to play in preventing abuse. I do think that when we talk about online safety, our conversation should be focused on what works, right? And we know what works. We know that firms need to be proactive in looking for abuse on their platforms. They need to look for both known and unknown forms of child sexual abuse materials. We know that they need to carry out risk assessments to understand how their platforms could potentially be used for grooming, right? They need to also have accessible reporting mechanisms in place. And I think they need to be transparent about both the harms they see on their platforms, as well as the actions that they have taken to tackle them, not just because we want tech companies to learn from one another, but we also need tech companies to work with law enforcement, to work with civil society organizations, and most importantly, work with children themselves.
Shailey, thank you so much for sharing with us. We Protect Global Alliance's initiatives. Shailey Hingorani joining us from London. And